And joining us right now is Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmitt to discuss this lawsuit. Attorney General, it's good to speak with you. Thank you for joining the program. He joins by phone. I mean, it's sad that this is just the route that you or anyone has to go down, just to kind of force some normalcy even in keeping with CDC guidance. I just don't understand what Paige thinks the science is on this. Tell us about this.
Yeah, it's great to be back with you, Dana. Yeah, essentially the message here is, enough is enough. A few weeks ago, we sent a letter to St. Louis County and San Page and the county health department asking for, an explanation and what scientific evidence and what data they have for these continued extreme restrictions. I mean, there's 115 counties in Missouri. Over 100 counties have no restrictions at all, right? And their numbers are lower in many instances than St. Louis County. So for some justification here, and not only did they completely ignore the request for justification, they tried to kind of pull a bait and switch, and they issued an amended order that didn't do that much. And so after we reviewed the order, it became clear that they, given the number of typos and grammatical errors and blatant inconsistencies, that they rushed this thing out the door to try to appease us and avoid litigation, and they did not. So yesterday we filed a lawsuit against the county. And there's three big claims here. One is that it's infringing on people's, religious freedom to exercise their religion in a way that they see fit, the ability for people to associate with one another in groups, and then also just all the other restrictions on businesses and other activity that there's no justification for, and were, arbitrary and capricious. And a couple of examples of that. So in St. Louis County today, you can sit, they're treating churches differently than other businesses. For example, you can sit next to a stranger on a bus, but you can't sit next to a neighbor in a church pew, right? So they're treating it so people's fundamental rights are being violated as it relates to their, practicing their religion. Also in St. Louis County today, in May of 2021, not May of 2020, you have to seek the government's permission to have a barbecue with friends. If you want to have a
in your own yard,
in a park,
or a park.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you want to, outside of your family or your pod, all these ridiculous concepts that are still exist. And so, like if you want to have a gathering and a class reunion or something like that, you've got to fill out a 23, point questionnaire submitted to the government for their approval. It's totally ridiculous. And then you've got all these other restrictions, and outdoor mask mandate. They're still talking about kids wearing masks in schools, where this is more about virtue signaling than it is about science. The New York Times, I think yesterday, even had a story about how the CDC, saying up to 10%. But what's the real transmission outside? It's more like 0.1%. So just if they talk about the science all the time, but they refuse to follow the science. And that's where we're at. So we filed a lawsuit to open up St. Louis County, which for your viewers and listeners, it's 1 million people. It's the biggest county in the state. There's area. 1 in 6 people in Missouri reside in St. Louis County. So enough's enough.
We're talking with Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmitt, and I'm looking at the reopen STL because it's at STL Corona, which sounds like it's a lot more fun than it is. But their face covering requirements that they have are kind of insane. And by kind of, I mean a lot. They said face coverings must be worn indoors at all times by a fully vaccinated and unvaccinated person. Well, wait. Vaccinated too? And they said that if they're a person, including employees or visitors over the age of 5, present at any business or public accommodation. Just on this alone, I remember the CDC discussion, particularly after they were confronted by all of these studies. Some of them, I think there was a Danish study that came out. There were some from Northeastern universities here in the United States. And they were discussing how children are not physically mature enough to where the receptors within their respiratory systems can even contain, for the lack of a better way to put it, this virus and thus transmit it. So it's silly. I know that the CDC for plane travel and all of that, we're saying 2 and under doesn't have to wear. But even starting at 5, have these people met a 5-year-old?
Well, as a dad of young kids, I can tell you that I know how difficult that is. And the most important point here is it's not based on science anymore. Like, no. If it ever was, or they claimed it to be, we know a lot more now a year into this. But they refuse to, and what this is really all about, as you know, Dana, this is about control. They don't want to relinquish the control, the ability to have that press conference, to parade out what everybody has to do. You have to listen to us, and you have to actually get our permission to go about living your daily lives. And people have had enough of this, and there's no justification for it. And they won't even tell you, St. Louis County won't even tell you, when's this going to end? Because we asked them that. What's the criteria for you to actually lift these restrictions? No answer.
Yeah.
So you could have, this is not supposed to go on in perpetuity. People were a year ago willing to make sacrifices. We didn't know what this was. People wanted to stop, the spread and all that. But now we know a lot more. We're a year into this. Kids don't need to wear masks in school. People don't need to wear masks when they're walking by people on a sidewalk. You don't need the government's permission to have a barbecue, and you certainly don't, being able to sit by a stranger on a bus and not be able to sit by somebody you don't know at church is discriminatory in one of our claims in this lawsuit as well.
Yeah, we're speaking with Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmitt. I was reading these orders that were put out by the St. Louis County Department of Health, Public Health Director, Dr. Faisal Khan, and he's one of the individuals named in this suit that's being brought on by the state that you had filed. And you're right. I mean, in looking at this, it just says, these are going into effect on May 3rd, and they're just going to continue until amended or rescinded. There's nothing in here anywhere on this website that actually lists, like, okay, at what point will this be lifted? Because the way that I'm reading it right now, it's still required for all businesses, and businesses have to they're required to post a sign. So if people do not comply with this, what is the penalty? I mean, is Sam Page and Dr. Khan here, are they going as far as California and trying to cite people? What is the penalty if they don't follow these?
Well, yeah, they've empowered the prosecuting attorney of St. Louis County to actually, cite people for these things. And, this is just where it becomes like this dystopian reality that nobody buys into. I think even people on the left are kind of coming. You mentioned Seth Meyers. People are coming to the realization like, hey, this is, it's really ridiculous. When you read through, I'm glad you're reading through, because most people haven't read through it. It's just, it makes no sense anymore. It's totally detached from reality. It's about virtue signaling at this point, and not about the science.
And not to interrupt you, but to that point, I have a note in here because I was looking at this earlier. There's one sentence in subsection 6. This is section 3, subsection 6. I can't believe it's like that, like onerous. It says cloth face coverings are recommended for the general public over surgical or N95 respirators, which should be reserved for medical professionals and first responders. We have talked about cloth coverings on this program, sir. Ad nauseum, and we have examined. I have so many studies that I have saved. They don't do anything. It's basically just a face diaper. They do nothing. So if this really was about containing the virus or limiting spread, like, why wouldn't they? I mean, we don't have a shortage of N95s or surgical masks anymore. So why are they? That doesn't make sense to me either.
No, and it's like when Texas lifted the statewide mask mandate, and Joe Biden says, well, I think he referred to as a bunch of Neanderthals. Well, those cases plummeted, right? I mean, Texas, they loosened or got rid of the restrictions altogether, and the cases are down. The cases are down everywhere. People, over half the population in Missouri now has received at least one dose of the vaccine. That doesn't even mention or take into account the people who are naturally becoming, immune. So whether it's, herd immunity, close to herd immunity, the reality is it's a different era, it's a different time now. And these local governments, in particular in Missouri, because Missouri really, the governor said, look, the local cities can make a lot of these determinations. St. Louis County at this point, the most populous county, is an outlier, and they just refuse to let go of this control that they have, this outsized control they have over people's lives. And it's got to stop. Mm-hmm. And, I wouldn't be doing my job as the chief law enforcement and legal officer of the state of Missouri, representing 6 million people. I swore an oath to defend the Constitution and enforce the laws of Missouri, to come in here and try to, advocate on behalf of the million people in St. Louis County that are under the thumb of this really restrictive regime.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're doing something about it. And of course, for those who don't know, the Attorney General is also seeking that open Senate seat with now outgoing Senator Roy Blunt. Well, I'm glad that you're doing something about this and pushing against it instead of going on an apology tour, talking about past transgressions of how you lost the governor's mansion the first time around. So I'm pleased that I'm pleased to see some positive action to this. So we appreciate you being on.
Well,
Please.
I appreciate that. No,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
we will. Well, no, we'll keep you in the loop, and we've taken a lead on pushing back against the Biden administration and their overreach of government, and we're going to do the same with local government. That's my job, and I want to take that same fighting spirit to the United States Senate. So it's always good catching up with you, Dana.
That's good. That's fantastic to hear. Attorney General Eric Schmitt from the Show Me State, my home state of Missouri. Sir, it was a pleasure talking with you. Keep us updated about this suit, and we'll talk again soon.